This episode's gonna be extra juicy.
Has to be red. I don't even let him consider other things because
so it's gonna be red.
It's gonna be red. It's nasty on your steering wheel. You know,
not drivable. Yeah.
Well, it might try to take your thumbs. How are you gonna excuse yourself for not being here for so long?
I don't know.
You
man.
owe them
a lot. So my name's James, and I've missed about 6 months. About 6 months, huh?
I hope not, but maybe.
I think so. 5 or 6 months. Well,
let's not think about it.
Morgan's here. We're gonna go through all the stuff that's been going on with the Frontier. With any build, 2 things, right? Staying motivated. 1, it's hard, takes patience. I've learned that over the years, but it's been harder lately with it being so close. It's hard to want to have people help you, but like you don't want to feel like you're bothering people. You know what I mean? I gotta get over my own weird stuff. 2nd, money, man. Money's tough. We gotta save money. There's always surprise finances, right? And that's it, man. I need a 3rd job. I need to figure something out, but trophy truck dreams, man. You know, here we are trucking along. No pun intended, 6 months later since the last update, but there's been a lot of reasons for me to come before that. Haven't come, but that's why this episode's gonna be extra juicy, extra peppery, extra sauce. Morgan, take it away.
All right, so the last time you guys saw an update on this on the channel was getting ready for powder coat. Everything is extremely tight, but it works. I think we were supposed to cover some plumbing on there too. The plumbing is done.
The celebration!
I need to have this list just because it's so much stuff, but I think where we left off, the car was raw. I think there was some sheet metal and some ducting. I think that was where we were last. And if we're off a little bit, whatever. Plumbing, hardline, suppression, powder coat, TT pump, and heat shield are kind of my hits right now. Just for my own ADHD brain to digest this stuff. Plumbing was something we wanted to get done. So on powder coat, like you got to think James has a small soccer team for a family, you know, so the manageability of having this thing either raw, even though it looks cool, or even painted where, you know, that stuff is going to fail at some point or just start eroding. I had this whole concept of like, we need to be able to pressure wash or quarter car wash this thing, you know, simple green, like a dirt bike or something, and then pressure wash it and put it away wet like that. And powder coat is the highest level of being able to do that. So the plumbing needed to be done beforehand, just so we know where we need to poke holes through the chassis, where we need to put grommets, where we need to tab stuff, where we need to land bulkheads for the hard line or for the transitions from soft to hard. The thing to consider with the platform James has is there's not a lot of room under the chassis. There's tube under here, and it's literally the panel work on the floors is just right on top of the tube, and then there's a skid plate, like a big belly pan going across this thing. So to run lines through the car to get anything that you need from the engine to the rear, you're doing weird stuff in the trans tunnel. The exhaust is already running through this channel. So there's just a lot of stuff going on with heat and fluids, and it's better to just bring that stuff into the car. That renders something kind of sketchy too, because if you have soft lines going into the car, you know, a soft line is more prone to failure through either cracking or bursting. So what we have in like the solution, and it is all of our lines tie in to bulkheads here. So there's soft lines in the engine bay. Hey, you need to be over here watching. I want to educate you. Right over there.
Pay attention.
All the soft lines bulkhead into the center of the car. They come to the back, and then they do the same thing, right? So there's just a chunk of the car that goes from soft, goes hard, then goes back to soft, and they all disperse into the coolers. The oil filter, which there's an oil cooler laying here too. I'm gonna stand up on this safely. And your fuel cell. Also, one of those lines is going over to our handbrake. So there's a redundant handbrake you'll see, and we can kind of ADHD on this thing, but you can see there's dual calipers. And then the handbrake itself has its own master. So it's just a complete redundant standalone system. The forward plumbing is all soft line, high pressure lines where they need to be in the steering. More hard line on the upper links. So these are our bulkheads. So this stuff will go get hose clamped onto the upper links. And you have a breather for your rear end housing, and then you have your rear brake, and then you have your hand brake. So those guys are all chilling. I don't know where to find a brake, but you can kind of see our lines on the axle too. You guys might wonder about these loops, and what this is that's called a service loop. And what that enables you to do is it looks like, well, you're like, dude, why is there so much extra line? But if you ever try to service these or change the pads, or if you have to change a rotor or take a hub off, it's really hard when the lines are so tight to take this caliper off and put it somewhere, because it just wants to live right there. So what you do is you can just clip the zip ties, and then you can take this and put it and hang it on a bungee, near your workspace, and it's all good.
Makes sense.
See more hardline stuff. Something else to note, Safecraft 10-pound fire suppression. The rule of thumb with the Safecraft bottles, and talking to Pat, the owner of Safecraft, 3 nozzles or sprayers per bottle. So that's the thing. If we wanted more areas to be hit in this thing where there's a sprayer or a nozzle, then you'd want another bottle. So there's a 10-pound here. You can kind of follow the plumbing through there. Another 10-pound. And these are on like really nice cradles. I don't know if you can see in there, but it's just like a nice standoff tube off the chassis. Seats into there, and then just hose clamp. And these are not leaving. And then you can kind of follow along. So there's a bulkhead going in the back wall. Up. Nozzle for the rear occupants. Through. I'm going to go to that side.
Suppression. So this is the suppression system.
Yep.
Right
so
here.
This is your fire out, and it's just, think about the same concept. If you had like a building, or even a school where there's a fire alarm gets pulled and the sprayers go on, it's kind of the same thing. And there's hot spots where you want to be able to protect the occupants and the car.
Yeah. If it's going to happen, it's highly likely to happen in this area, and this is where people will be.
Yeah. It's just, and it's not so much that like you might not be able to save the car, but at least it gives you more time to get out and not get the crap burnt out of you. So you have rear occupant nozzle, you have front occupant like downward spray. These guys tag through here.
Awesome.
And then what happens is it disperses again, and it has a footwell for your passenger, for your driver, and that's key too. And the back doesn't get a footwell because there's a lot going on here. Your header, all of your exhaust is starting here. There's a lot of fluids going on. So if something breaks out in there and it seeps through the access panels, then it's like you want your feet to be protected. There's also a nozzle that goes through here and goes down on the converter, which is also a problematic area. So that's taken care of. And then you have a front spray that gets your engine bay. It's 6 nozzles. I think running all of it upstairs like this makes sense. It's away from all the elements, so it's just its own system.
That's awesome, man.
Other stuff to note, just more. This is your brake system, masters, hard lines. This is your switch. So this is your brake switch. That's your. I don't know the actual pro term for this thing, so excuse me, but this is what would indicate like your tail lights coming on. Residual valves, and then that guy. You can see everything's finaled in here. All the hardware has torque seal to kind of indicate that we've gone through it, and it's been tightened how it needs to be. And then again, all these lines are just living inside the car. There's not a lot of room underneath, and I can even show you guys what that looks like under here. But you can see this is that's your floor. And then boom, skid. So there's no real estate to really run lines. And then once you get into the center section here, it's all business. So, powertrain and drivetrain right down the middle, exhaust wrapped on the outsides. There's just not a home for running fluids next to so much heat. And it's just the safest way to do things. There is a lot more to heat shield products than just header wrap or this stuff, which you probably see. This is called sticky shield. The way this works is if you have your hot part is on the facing part of the aluminum. This brings temperatures down. If there's an inch of space from your hot part, it brings that down 90% on the other side. So that's a huge gain. With some of James's car, there's areas where it might be a 1/4 inch, or an 1/8 inch from this stuff. So do the math, like the ratio would go down, but it's still suppressing the heat insanely or deflecting it. The other stuff is this is DB Armor. I know the competitor, you'd probably want to say Dynamat with something like this, but what I really value here is this is way lighter and it's thinner, and it kind of does the same thing. I had a really good example of this on the car because we only did one side for a second, and I knocked on it and you could hear it, the harmonics were crazy. Now I come to you. And then you'd do the other side and you'd knock on it and it would just be suppressed. There's a combo.
Noise and heat. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the thing with heat shield products. The other reason I love them and working with them is because they are phone call people. So they have like a massive website, but they have like, if you called and you say, hey, I'm building this, I'm building that, I'm worried about this, or I want this to be cooler, there's someone that will pick up the phone and they will talk to you and they will get you whatever you need for your application. And like, that's my style with stuff. I don't like emails. I don't like to text. I like to call people and get down to it and get answers like that. So there's a human connection you get from that. There's some other stuff here just to kind of give you examples. So this is your wrap. This is like your really typical stuff for headers or for exhaust. And when you guys apply this stuff, it's way easier to get like a bowl of water and put the roll in there and then apply it wet. It is fiberglass, so if you're like balls deep in it, you're gonna be... Spark plug boots are not on yet. They'll go on the spark plugs. And then there's a bunch of this stuff, and this is our hot rod sleeve. So this goes over every single bit of soft line we have in the car. The other thing we ran into with this is like all the plumbing we did before we had this stuff. If you have a 90, like an AN fitting 90 on here, you're like, well, dude, how do I fit this? If this is the diameter of the hose, how do I fit it over a 90? And you really don't. You just up the diameter of this stuff, let it be baggy, and then you just seal the deal onto the fitting with heat shrink, and it's fine. And the most important thing with this stuff, from what Chris has said, you don't just put it on the line and leave it loose. Like you can see, this one's just chilling, right? That's what's under there. This is where we're at, and you have to seal the deal. So this is what it would look like finaled. That's what like every line has, and like we talked about it, you run a bigger, that's like a Chinese finger trap, dude. Look at that.
I am stuck.
This stuff's really important to seal the deal with putting shrink wrap on the end of it because it doesn't want to have airflow going on the side of the line. There's a bunch of this that we've got pretty much done, but you can see like this is your loose version where that's actually sleeved over, and we still need to shrink wrap this stuff. And then you can see this is your shrink wrap version. Some of this is tighter where it's up on the fitting, and we'll just go through everything here and do the same. We're just waiting on shrink wrap. That's what you're gonna get when you close the doors, especially when there's 3 doors in here and then you close the 4th door, it's all boom.
You're in a subwoofer.
Yeah, it's crazy. So we'll apply all of the DB armor up here into here, and we have standoffs in here. And there's also product we have for that. It's just like a weather strip, and you can put this around a lot of stuff. Like people use this on tin work all the time where they don't wanna have hard edge or a sharp edge. Just that little bit right there, I'm gonna slip into here on the whole top. There's also sticky shield on the back wall here that'll protect from some heat. Something Chris taught me is the more heat that fuel sees, the less octane you have. So your octane will decrease the hotter it gets. So like it's super important to make sure that your fuel stays as cool as possible. And I'm sure a lot of people knew that, but I did not. So you learn something new every day, you know?
Yeah, this is gonna be a pump gas truck. Ain't nobody got that freaking budget for 100 octane, dude.
Well, it's also, if you're like in Mexico,
Pemex.
You guys are probably gonna have some questions on temperatures with this stuff, and I think this would get hot enough to leave a mark on your hands or your legs. So my intention is I just gotta, like, I'm gonna have to put some kind of a trim cover over that, and it can go last. I don't think it's a huge deal, but it'll just be something where
Does it need to be wrapped?
I don't think wrapped. I think what it gets is it just needs like a trim panel, you know, like some kind of aluminum. And the cool way to do that is just to like open it up with like stainless mesh where you can still see down in there. If you really want style points, you put like a Baja Designs light inside there, and then it like lights that stuff up, and you
like
see it.
Glass, like a flux capacitor.
Similar.
This is what makes time travel possible.
Something else to consider. So all the access panels, the removable access panels, all of those also get this sticky shield. There's a DB gasket. So this stuff is like a foam gasket that seals the deal. And we'll apply this all around the perimeter. And then you wonder like, well, is this going to be sealed from the engine bay? When this stuff compresses into there, it's a great seal. It's also like a reusable seal. I've worked on some cars where this stuff's a chore because they either dynamat over everything. The dynamat gets very sticky when it gets hot and it's in like areas like that, and to take like your access panels off of like a tube chassis pre-runner, it's a chore, and it's like, it's nasty, and it doesn't seem like it's it's like a one-time thing. So I'm just trying to make this where we can service it, and that was the whole point. That's the whole point of having all of that product under the car, because it's like Chris was like, well, I'm usually with hot rods and stuff, you do it on the top surfaces, but that's also because hot rods are exposed on the bottom. They're not like a covered element. And what we have here is like we have an opportunity where all of the pockets in between the chassis and the floor, everything gets a skid plate like on the bottom. So we have complete containment of all this stuff. We can run it hidden, and then we can literally just have this whole entire interior portion where it's raw. I think you could probably just take a pressure washer and clean out the whole inside of this thing, and it's fine, and it'll go out as long as you have a way to get the water. You know, if there's trapped water, it comes out. Like, I want it to be just streamlined, and all we have in here, like, there's already all the bead roll, like these ribs are set up for grip, and then we put grip tape over the areas where the occupant feet are going to be, and then you're good. That's like the intention, is just not to take away from this look. And it was like that before when it was all welded. You know, they were like, dude, how can we not cover it up? But I think this is our next best thing. Is it's just raw dog like this, and there's grip tape.
It's hard because it looks so
it does
awesome, and I think like that's kind of like the whole feel that Morgan's been going for, the vibe that I've definitely been sold on, the whole kind of old fighter pilot looking, futuristic fighter pilot. I don't know.
I would say really, like some really cool. CIA Skunk Works style, Kelly Johnson looking stuff. We still get the wins with the OG coloring on the exterior, but really, like, you have to think about, it's not like bougie. This car is going to go out and this is the spokesperson for Terra and what James has created, and so this is going to get used more than it's going to get shown, and with that it'll also get put away wet. It's hard to manage these things already when you're just one dude, and when you have, you know, your family like you do.
A lot of things.
It needs to be something where it's as much maintenance as it requires, that we just do as we prepare it where it's the least amount.
Right.
I think the maintenance is really going to lie in hub service, so corner preps, possible rack service maybe once a season. Obviously oil changes as much as possible, and your diff.
Standard.
With that, yeah, and I think, you know, there's probably, once that time comes, we can, you know, if there's a guy out there that wants to come help prep this thing, that'll be cool, you know, and we'll set that up. I
want to be that guy. That's me. Tell us about the powder coat.
Okay, first and foremost, we did the powder coat. Thank goodness.
It happened.
Because that was an issue. And I know, like, we've talked about that before, but I am so glad that you agreed to that. However you need to, you know, if I need to twist your arm a little bit.
I was going to cry on it, dude, you know?
Yeah, or steal it or something. Yeah. But the bottom line is, this is the highest version of not having to take care of stuff or touch stuff up. Powder coat, I believe in powder coat, especially on a chassis. Something we wanted to look at is not letting this thing get lost in translation at a powder coat facility. It's attainable to powder coat your car. Like, if you guys are thinking about it and you have some extra wiggle room in your budget to do it, it's something that for the long run works. And, you know, you go, well, what if it's something I got to make an adjustment and it doesn't work and we got to cut off and this, and that is a thing. But if you can be pretty sure about what you've built, that kind of catastrophic stuff doesn't happen as long as you're thinking about it while you're building it.
Just really quick, I was reluctant for powder because I've had some experiences at shops before, and it sucks. Like, sometimes, like, they'll have your stuff forever, dude, and it is what it is. And so, like, I was concerned about that, and I was also concerned about price point and who the hell are we gonna find to freaking powder coat this whole long ass truck? I mean, it's like 15 plus feet, 16 feet, you know? Morgan says 18. That's a huge concern, dude. And then I'm like, all right, here, I'm gonna hand this thing over to a shop, and who knows how long. There's so many small components that Morgan and his team had to organize, and it's just like, it's scary, bro. So I was like, man, I kind of just put it together. I'll figure it out. But, you know, luckily we found this badass shop.
Sean at Quality Powder in San Diego, he took this thing on in his shop. He's like an OG hot rod guy, moon eyes, like badass dude. Under 2 weeks, they had everything done. We had 3 different color formats on this thing. Like, we have the chassis, and then we have complementary, a secondary color, which is like the contrast color, and then we have a tertiary color. This is called an anodized black. It's a very matte, muted black. There's no reflections. There's just different value of black. Like, it doesn't even really show highlights. All the chassis like this is this color, and then anything that bolts on that's still kind of part of the chassis is still this. It's not something where, like, every little part is gloss black, because then it, you know, doesn't connect like that. So this is also really good because this is a touch-up situation you can for sure hit with a matte black spray paint can. It's not going to stand out or be something where you can't manage it. It's not enough of a flashing
where it
color.
can't match it. Yeah,
or it's not like, say you did this and it was like a metallic gray. Cool, man. If you hit that with a spray paint can, you're gonna know there's a blemish right there that
for
you
sure.
hit. The chassis is all of our anno black. And then you can see all the panels and everything that bolts on is that super piano gloss black, highly reflective. We did the fuel cell can, so
It's so sick, dude.
we took all the bladder out. We did the can itself, so it wasn't just that red, all fresh hardware and everything. And then we also did the shrouds on the coolers, all the fan shrouds on the coolers. So like, there's just hits that you usually wouldn't do. I mean, if you were really going for it, you could probably do all the cooler themselves, but I just didn't need to do that. And then like you look at the axle, and then you look at the trailing arms. All the landing gear is this champagne, like a number 2 gray.
There it is. Yeah.
What I say, like when I say number 2, is if you think about the values of grays, you start with a 0, which would be like a white, and a 10 would be a black. So that's how you'd like talk about a certain type of gray. And there would be a cool and a warm. It's really reminiscent of like, old like race car, like road car stuff. That's kind of the vibe, is it's like an OG color. So everything that swings on this car, all the steering is all that champagne color.
I love this, man. It looks so hard.
And
hell yeah.
The other thing too is it's going to go good with red, right? Because you guys ask about the cab or the fiberglass, and it's like this has to be red. I don't even let him consider other things because
So it's going to be red.
It's going to be red.
Okay,
that's how it goes.
He's right.
The other thing I was talking about is like not mixing too many of the colors. Like you can see the sway bar to sway bar arm to axle is all consistent. I didn't want to do like champagne black. Like I didn't want the zebra hit on this thing where it's like making stuff pop in the wrong way. It needed to be something where it was more uniform. And then like obviously all the panels, like this thing has full enclosure panels. It has its top enclosure panel. You can see the fuel cell top is all black. So
these enclosure panels match this.
Yeah, this is just another example of like your complementary contrast, not like a deep contrast. This thing will be all one big paneled, sealed thing coming through with like a really profound ducting going on. But you can see the gloss, anything that still bolts on, that structure, like the front bumper and then even the pusher, right? This is the pusher for it. It's all that same anno black. You just don't want to have the interruption in the chassis where it's like, say something bolts on and there's a direct tube clamp and then you have your hard anno matte, and then you have a gloss going to it. Like it takes away from the actual overall shape.
Can't wait to share this with everybody. Everything looks just so damn good.
You want to talk about the pump?
Yeah, we could talk about how the motor's in.
The motor's in. Yeah, I mean, we should have done that the first episode.
We did do that, huh?
Yeah. Trans is in.
Trans is in. Headers are in. Headers are wrapped. This was a really big concern. Obviously, super tight cab. We've talked about this. If you guys have seen other episodes, the truck is very wide and looks really big on video and in pictures, but when you're at it, it's smaller, but it looks freaking... I went like this. I'm such a dork, but it looks so good, dude. But check this out. They did such an awesome job. The guys at Heat Shield really examined this area right here. So you can see this is where I'm going to be sitting. Morgan and his team made a lot more space for my feet down there so they're not cooking.
My feet are strong.
People are going to look at that and go, you call that comfortable driving space?
Right? Yeah, they probably will. And you know what? Even if I'm slightly uncomfortable, as long as I'm passing you.
Well, I think the thing that's important...
I'm just kidding. I'm not going to pass anybody. This thing's only going to be at shows.
Part of the priority here is just... The motor is shoehorned in here. I would say it's 24 inches more rearward than a factory location would have it. And that means that this whole cab is consumed by this engine area.
A lot.
Yeah, and it is limited foot room. When you start sitting in the seats, like that's the one thing to notice. When we delivered this to Off-Road Expo a couple years ago and it was in very raw roller form, James sat in it and he steered it in and he goes, this feels perfect. Yeah. And James and I are relatively the same size. So it was a win because he didn't need to really be here. I could kind of like, all right, make it feel good and make it manageable. And I would say this is tailored to you. I don't think it's like
I'm stoked, man. You don't really get to see this perspective in other videos, but now that it's in, you could actually see it, right? Motor, trans right there. And you could see like where our feet would go. But I mean, Morgan's right, man. You know, it is a little tighter from what people would expect, but it feels like battle. It feels like Starfighter, bro. Like I'm in an X-Wing fighter ready to rip.
That's fine. I need help.
This whole thing is tight. It's not built like just to look cool. It looks cool, but it's because it's just following the function. the whole importance of like heat shield was to get in and get all of our areas dialed in before we start stuffing them with powertrain and drivetrain.
Yeah.
And now we're at that point where the engine's in, the E-Trans is in, everything's together. Everything is finaled. Everything we're going through with, either anti-seize, Loctite, torque seal, torquing what we need to. Same with all the exhaust. Everything's wrapped. Everything's tied. All of the bolts, every single bolt in here is fresh. So all grade 8. We're not running 12 points or anything crazy. Just your typical either
standard.
F911 or grade 8. It'll be fine. But everything has the right grip, which means, that's really important. And I don't know if we do a segue on that sometime, but grip on a bolt is when you have something that's in a double shear.
We should do that even like super in depth on the final
Sure.
assembly prep episode.
Totally. Yeah. And once all the suspension's on and it's hung, you'll be able to see more of that. It's kind of just loosey goosey, and we have some bolts just pinning the pivots in until we get the right bolts.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's really like when you have something in double shear where it's captured by, say it's a swinging component or moving component, and it's got, two fixed areas of the chassis capturing it. You want no threads to be part of that, because it creates a failure, and it also creates, it'll start, wobbling out or wallowing out the hole, like ovalizing it like a BMX headset, will do. If it's loose, it'll start kind of doing its thing.
When you're driving over that terrain, it's no effing joke.
Yeah, and it does
like
it quick.
constant, aggressive, violent shakes that you may not feel, but
It's abuse.
those parts of the car are dancing, bro. Looking like a cheetah running after a gazelle.
That's probably a lot smoother.
It's crazy.
It's constant abuse, and that's what these cars are built for. So that's a really important thing. And even when I was younger, when I built Beth and stuff, I just threw bolts in there where it was enough to tighten them and put a washer and nut on. And I just saw that stuff firsthand, where it can create hardware failure, but it can also really just it'll wallow out your chassis holes, and fixing that stuff sucks.
I can imagine.
It's just not a joke. So everything we're going through gets that treatment. It gets proper hardware. We cut down, if we need a bolt that has the right grip and then the threads are really long, we cut it down so there's just 3 threads showing past the washer and the nut. That's like your typical. You can see some of that. Like this is one guy, right? Same thing for the rack, right? Like that's cut down.
Yeah.
If it's something like this, it's easy. If it's, that's probably 3/8 or 5/16. So everything will be fresh like that.
And I think that's really a really great segue into what we're going to do next. We had heard some feedback from friends, and Morgan and I had talked about it a little. This truck was originally built for 37s. This truck used to run 35s. And now we're at a big old Toyo 40 to support that. That goes into what Morgan was talking about with building everything out, right? Like you don't want to build too much over one area and then have to take it down because you have to fix something or put something else in there. So that's why the back is pretty close to being done, and the front is naked right now.
The bottom line is, with the Truggy for 40s, we had to upgrade the rack and we upgraded the pump. We already had a pressure relief valve on the thing, and we had the right filter and reservoir. But with this, talking with enough people, everybody's overall thing is we just need to swap out for a TT pump. We can get away with using that rack. The bigger rack just really gives more angle and has more steering travel. So it's just something where we can run the rack. We might have to bump up the lines on some of the high pressure lines, maybe even the return. The pressure relief valve works, the filter works, the reservoir works. It's just putting that pump in. So nothing's really gonna go, suspension's gonna get hung yet, because we got to make this situation different. And this is already pretty tight.
So damn tight, you guys.
Yep.
I mean, Morgan was even showing me a little earlier before we started that there's some spacers over here that may make some difference, but we don't know how much of a difference. And I'm hoping we don't have to go into that tube or make any of those modifications, but but Morgan's team may just have to. I was kind of maybe I should just try it, or maybe it'll be okay. Morgan and his team were just yeah, you know what, man? We're here now. Might as well.
It's just one of those things that I'm grateful that James decided to bite that bullet, because it's something where it could be as severe as taking it out the first time, and it's nasty on your steering wheel.
Not drivable. Yeah.
Well, it might try to take your thumbs and stuff like that, and it's not safe. And then if you want to, you're building this car to go 100 miles an hour and go through huge holes and be consistent and drive with one hand and be able to shift, and it's something that if you don't do it now, and then you literally get out there and it's 30 minutes. It's been 10 years. And 30 minutes in, you're all, well, time to take all that apart, time to pull all the suspension, time to get that service ready so we can cut and grind and do whatever we need to do. Not worth it. In 5 days, that'll be fixed. Yeah. Solution done. That's it. That's all it takes.
All right, guys. Well, that's pretty much it for updates right now.
Things to look forward to next is getting a billet TT pump in here, configuring however we need to with the belt system. The process here is getting this thing ready for wiring. That's really where we're going to be at. Plug all the front suspension. It's going to be like big shock body, reservoir, and it's like 4 huge hits of cylinders all lined up in the engine bay. And it's something where it clears the 40s and it clears that bump and lock.
Dang, that sounds tight.
So it's close. It's like I said, you guys, I think you can count on this thing. Like next time you see it completely together, less the fiberglass, doors on, no seats in, all the dash in, all the upper console. You know, I think we'll probably put all the skins on just for proof of concept, and we'll give it to Justin with all the enclosure panels.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing too.
He needs to know where he's going to route it.
Yeah, or where we have to, I want to say the F word, but I know we're trying to not do that. Unscrew some things.
We're pretty close, dude. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for being patient. Heat Shield, you're amazing. Quality Powder, you're amazing. See you soon. Later.